The conference room fell silent, every eye fixed on Marcus as his hands moved through the air with perfect precision, forming words his coworkers never expected him to know. The woman across from him, Elena, watched with tears streaming down her face. The three guys who'd orchestrated this cruel setup stood frozen, their smug grins dissolving into something that looked a lot like shame. Nobody had planned for this. Nobody was laughing anymore. If you love stories about unexpected kindness and the beautiful moments that restore our faith in humanity, subscribe to Sage Stories. Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Now let me tell you how we got here. Marcus Chen had been working at Henderson Tech Solutions for about 6 months. He was the kind of guy who kept to himself mostly, always polite but never quite part of the inner circle. He'd eat lunch alone in his cubicle, headphones on, scrolling through his phone. During office happy hours, he'd show up for exactly 30 minutes, nurse a single beer, then slip out before anyone really noticed. His coworkers knew almost nothing about him beyond his solid work performance and his quiet demeanor. The office had its share of characters, but 3 guys in particular ran the social scene. Brad from sales, Jake from marketing, and Owen from IT. They weren't exactly bullies, but they loved their pranks, their inside jokes, their constant needling of anyone they deemed too serious or too different. Marcus had mostly stayed off their radar, which was exactly how he preferred it. That changed on a Tuesday in March. The company had hired Elena Vasquez as a contractor for a 3-month project. She was brilliant, a software developer with credentials that impressed even the most jaded tech veterans in the office. She was also deaf. She communicated through a combination of written notes, text messages, and an interpreter who came with her to important meetings. Brad noticed her first. Then the whispers started. By Wednesday, he'd hatched what he thought was a hilarious plan. He'd watched Marcus eating alone again, noticed his perpetual solitude, and decided this was comedy gold waiting to happen. He pitched it to Jake and Owen over lunch at the sandwich place across the street. "Picture this," Brad said, barely containing his laughter. "We tell Marcus that Elena has been asking about him. We build it up, make him think she's interested. Then we arrange this whole meet-cute situation, where he has to try to communicate with her. The poor guy will be completely lost. It'll be awkward as hell." Jake snorted into his soda. "Dude, that's kind of messed up." "It's harmless," Brad insisted. "We're not trying to hurt anyone. It's just funny because Marcus is so awkward and she can't even hear whatever weird thing he'd say anyway. Come on, it'll be legendary." Owen, who should have known better, nodded along. "We set it up for Friday. End of the week. Everyone's in a good mood. It'll be something to talk about." They started planting seeds on Thursday. Brad casually mentioned to Marcus that the new contractor had been asking about him. Marcus looked confused. "Me? Why?" "I don't know, man. Maybe she thinks you're cute or something. She asked Jake about you yesterday." This was a complete fabrication. Elena had never asked about Marcus. She barely knew anyone in the office beyond her immediate project team. But Marcus, lonely and honestly a little flattered, allowed himself to believe it might be true. Jake followed up later that day. "Hey, so Elena wanted to know if you'd be willing to meet with her Friday afternoon. Something about wanting a second opinion on some code architecture. I told her you'd be the guy to ask." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. "Yeah, sure. I can do that." By Friday afternoon, the trap was set. Brad had reserved a small conference room. He'd told Elena that there was a technical review scheduled and that Marcus from the development team would be joining to discuss integration possibilities. Elena, professional and eager to collaborate, had agreed readily. She had no idea she was being used as a prop in someone's idea of entertainment. Brad, Jake, and Owen positioned themselves in the adjacent conference room, door cracked just enough to watch through the glass walls. They'd hyped this up to a few other coworkers, and a small audience had gathered, trying not to be obvious about their anticipation. Marcus arrived first, nervous, running his hand through his hair repeatedly. He'd actually changed his shirt during lunch break, put on something nicer. Elena arrived 2 minutes later, professional, carrying her laptop and a notepad. She smiled politely and took a seat across from him. The watchers in the next room leaned forward. This was it, the moment of maximum awkwardness. Marcus would try to speak to someone who couldn't hear him, realize the situation, flounder helplessly, and they'd all have a story to tell for months. Except that's not what happened at all. Marcus looked at Elena, took a breath, and his hands began to move. Fluid, confident, expressive. He was signing. Not basic signs or awkward attempts, but fluent American Sign Language, the kind that comes from years of practice and genuine immersion in deaf culture. "Hello, I'm Marcus. It's really nice to meet you," his hand said. "I understand we're here to discuss the integration architecture for your project." Elena's eyes went wide. Her hands flew up in response, excitement and relief written all over her face. "You sign. I wasn't expecting this at all. This is wonderful." "Yes, I've been working on the database schema, and I wanted to run some ideas past someone who understands both the legacy, system, and modern approaches." In the next room, Brad's smile had vanished. "Wait, what's happening?" "He's signing," Owen whispered, stating the obvious. "He knows sign language." "That's not possible," Jake said. But the evidence was right in front of them. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus and Elena had an animated, entirely signed conversation. They discussed technical details, yes, but they also talked about their backgrounds, their experiences. Elena asked him where he learned to sign. Marcus's hands told her that his younger sister, Amy, had been born profoundly deaf. Their parents had made the decision early that the entire family would learn ASL, that Amy would grow up in a household where communication was never a barrier, where she was never made to feel less than. "She's in college now," Marcus signed, his face soft with obvious affection. "Studying education. She wants to teach at a school for the deaf. She's the bravest person I know." Elena signed back that she could tell Amy meant everything to him, that it showed in how he carried himself, how he moved through the world with awareness and respect. She told him about her own journey, about the isolation she sometimes felt in hearing workplaces, about how exhausting it could be to always be the one who had to adapt, to explain, to make herself understood in spaces that weren't built for her. Marcus nodded with deep understanding. He signed that he'd watched his sister navigate that same exhaustion, that same constant need to prove herself in a world that often treated deafness as a deficit rather than a difference. He signed that meeting Elena, getting to use ASL at work, reminded him that there was a whole community of people who didn't see communication as one size fits all. That's when Elena asked the question that changed everything. "So why did they tell me this was a technical review? Your friends in the other room? The ones watching us right now, why are they staring?" Marcus's hands froze. He turned slightly, saw the faces in the window of the adjacent conference room, saw the crowd that had gathered. The realization hit him like cold water. This hadn't been a genuine meeting. This had been a setup. They'd thought they were creating an awkward situation for their own amusement, using both him and Elena as entertainment. He turned back to Elena and his hands moved slowly, deliberately. "I'm so sorry. I think I understand now. I believe some people thought it would be funny to set up an awkward situation between us. They didn't know I could sign. They were expecting me to struggle, to make a fool of myself. And I think they were expecting you to be part of that spectacle." Elena's expression shifted from confusion to hurt to anger in rapid succession. Her hands snapped through, signs that needed no translation, to convey her feelings about being treated as a prop in someone's prank. Marcus stood up. His hand said, "Wait here for just a moment, please. I need to address this." He walked out of the conference room and straight into the adjacent one. Brad, Jake, Owen, and about 5 other coworkers suddenly found themselves face to face with a Marcus they'd never seen before. He wasn't quiet or passive or easy to dismiss. "You thought this would be funny," he said, his voice level but hard as steel. "You thought setting up an awkward interaction between me and Elena would be entertainment for your Friday afternoon. You didn't see her as a colleague or a person. You saw her as a punchline, and you saw me as someone too pathetic to matter if you humiliated him." Brad started to speak, but Marcus held up a hand. "I don't want to hear it. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go in there, and you're going to apologize to Elena. Not because I'm telling you to, but because you used her and that's not okay. You're going to think about why you thought this was acceptable, and you're going to be better." The room was silent. Owen looked at the floor. Jake's face had gone red. Brad, for once in his life, had nothing to say. Marcus went back to the conference room. Elena was still there, arms crossed, face set. His hands moved again. "I'm sorry that happened. You deserved better." This company should be better. Elena's response was quick and fierce. You have nothing to apologize for. Thank you for standing up.
For both of us.
One by one, Brad, Jake, and Owen filed into the room. Their apologies were stumbling, inadequate but genuine in their discomfort. Elena listened, her face impassive, then simply nodded and left. She had work to do, and she wasn't interested in making them feel better about themselves. Word spread through the office like wildfire. By Monday, the story had reached management. Brad, Jake, and Owen found themselves in a very uncomfortable meeting about workplace conduct and respect. But more than that, something had shifted in the culture. People started paying attention to how they treated each other, to who got left out of conversations, to who was being set up as the butt of jokes. Marcus and Elena became genuine friends. They had lunch together regularly, sometimes joined by others who wanted to learn basic signs. Marcus started an informal ASL lunch and learn group. The company, prompted by Elena's feedback and Marcus's quiet advocacy, brought in deaf culture training and improved their accessibility practices. Sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty reveal the biggest opportunities for change. What Brad and his friends intended as a joke became a turning point, not because of their intentions, but because Marcus chose dignity over silence, chose to use his voice and his hands to defend someone who deserved better. He showed an office full of people that communication isn't about words alone, that respect doesn't require hearing, and that standing up for others is never awkward, it's just necessary. The next time you see someone being left out, used for entertainment, or treated as less than, remember Marcus. Remember that you might have skills, knowledge, or perspective that can change everything. Kindness isn't always soft. Sometimes it's standing firm, speaking truth, and refusing to let cruelty go unchallenged. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply see people, really see them, and treat them with the humanity they deserve. Share your own stories of unexpected kindness in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you've stood up for others or witnessed courage in everyday moments.